I expected nonstop carnage, but what surprised me the most about this movie really wasn't the violence. Today was the official release date for Evil Dead Burn, and I'm fresh out of the theater recording my reaction right here for you guys. My first impressions of the film is it's a very intense story that, although is not perfect and definitely has its flaws, fits pretty well into the Evil Dead universe. My overall rating for this movie would probably be somewhere around a 6.5 or 7 out of 10, and I'm going to get into that more, but that's my rating for you guys out of 10 right there. Some of my favorite scenes in this movie, just off top, and I do want to say before I get too deep into this, completely spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry about any of that. I'm not going to get into anything other than general plot points, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you're safe. But with that being said, some of my favorite scenes have to include one of the scenes in the third act that is kind of a callback to Ash from Evil Dead. I'm not going to get too much into it because, again, spoilers, but there are some very cool callbacks for fans of the series here that I think you guys will enjoy if you decide to go out and see it. Again, another scene I really loved just from a cinematography aspect alone was the rooftop scene that you can actually see showcased in the trailer. And it really wasn't much longer in the movie than it is in the trailer, but it was a really cool shot to see on the big screen. So shout out to the directors for that. As far as who this movie is for, I'd say it's definitely for more hardcore fans of Evil Dead and fans of movies that, are a little bit more on the gore fest side, but it also does have a story, which I'm going to get into. Evil Dead is one of those series that sometimes has trouble balancing the two between being a gory, just slash movie versus having a central plot that you're following along with. And this movie doesn't have an absence of that problem, but it's kind of up to the audience to decide if you think it's a good mixture or not. Who this movie is not for is definitely people that are sensitive to family topics, dealing with trauma, abuse, and things of that nature, because a central plot of this movie heavily relies on that aspect. This is definitely at its roots a family trauma story. If you're sensitive to things like that, I wouldn't watch this movie. Also, if you're an animal lover, God, I'll get to that in a second. And as far as the central plot, as I said, at its core, it's a family trauma story. You're following a family that has some roots tied to the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. And honestly, I find that a really interesting part of the movie because this is something that we saw in Evil Dead Rise to an extent, although to what I understand, the family didn't have any direct connection other than when the kids in Evil Dead Rise obviously find the Necronomicon and the dagger, and if you've seen that movie, you know what happens. But yeah, or they essentially bring back all of the Deadites and cause havoc in that movie. As you know, that's typically what happens in Evil Dead. Somebody reads the Necronomicon, makes that fatal mistake, and the rest of the plot plays out how it does. So essentially, it's just a family trauma with all of the gore and intensity that you would expect out of an Evil Dead entry. The Deadites actually have a motive this time around, which is pretty cool, I will say, because the enemy actually having a motive that isn't just simply carnage definitely adds a little bit of immersion into the film and gives you kind of more of a reason to care and be invested in the lore of Evil Dead. As somebody who hadn't rewatched some of the earlier movies in a while, this movie did make me want to go back and rewatch some of those, not only because I loved those movies the first time I watched them, but just because this movie really does call back to a lot of earlier entries and has a lot of lore mixed in as well. As far as the setup, I thought they did a really good job at establishing the family, like I said, setting up some lore. And as far as building up the motive for the Deadites as well, I thought they did a very excellent job at that. They made it they hinted at it early on, and they made it pretty clear going into the second act and in the middle of the movie, essentially, what exactly they were there for, what they're looking for, why they're coming after this family in the first place. Although I feel like I could piece that together from the information we're given about the family earlier in the movie. But anyway, I digress. And as far as the pacing goes, we have a very strong opening here with some of my favorite cinematography once again from the whole movie. I really love this without going too in depth into it, no pun intended. It's dealing with water. It's kind of starting out, and I don't ever remember Evil Dead doing this. Again, it may be me being stupid, not remembering, or just a lack of recent watches of some of the older movies in the franchise, I don't remember them ever utilizing water and Deadites together, especially in the way that it's done here. It's not really something that I knew was possible. So yeah, they definitely get some creativity points for that. But it starts off really strong with a great opening sequence, and then it kind of slows down a little bit to introduce us to our actual characters of the story, the people we're going to be following throughout the main portion, the main plot points of this story. I'm going to have to say that's about the only slow part of the movie you're really going to get, because even during the portion where you're getting introduced to the characters and we're kind of learning a little bit about them, it's still pretty intense. There's definitely a lot of tension building still being done in a lot of scenes, even when the carnage hasn't fully kicked off yet. So I will say, as far as the pacing of this movie, it's either very intense throughout, which is the majority of it, or even in the spots that are, I guess you would consider more calm, there's still some kind of looming chaos and some tension building there that I thought really did aid the movie, and I thought made it what it was and made it a good entry into the Evil Dead franchise. Was I interested in the story? Honestly, yes, I was interested in the story. I was pretty locked in throughout the movie. It did a great job of keeping you immersed in the story and not really giving you a chance to look away. I wasn't even really able to take that many notes during the movie because I was just really trying to watch and make sure I didn't miss anything, because it was kind of moving at a breakneck speed, especially in the second and third acts. So yeah. Now moving on to some of the actual aspects of the horror. Now, was it actually scary? Yes, to me it was scary. Now, I will not say it's the most unsettling, the most scary movie I've ever seen. Not even really the most unsettling movie I've saw this year or in the past couple years. But it definitely has scary scenes. It has some very unsettling scenes. Depending on what scares you, that's a very subjective question, I guess, but at the same time, I'd say a majority of people will find at least a few scenes from this either scary, unsettling. I wouldn't say there's anything downright terrifying in this, but yeah, it's definitely got some good scary scenes. As far as jump scares go, to me personally, it was more tension building moments versus traditional jump scares. While the movie definitely does not lack your traditional jump scares, there are plenty of those in here. One that I very much have stuck in my brain still, that again I'm not going to get into because of spoilers, but essentially a character does a very fast movement that I wasn't expecting, although I should have been. And, you know, maybe that's a jump scare that won't get most people, but it's definitely one that got me and my fiance as we about jumped out of our seats. But yeah, as far as jump scares go, a lot more just tension building moments where you're kind of expecting something to happen versus just trying to outright surprise the viewer with a jump scare. And as far as the tension building goes, that aspect of it, I really think that what ties the horror in, ties the story together, is the family tension and just the tension in the scenes, from the score down to the lighting, down to the angles they chose to use. It's got a lot of intense scenes in it, a lot of scenes where you don't know what's going to happen next. Definitely is one of those fingernail biting, like gripping your seats type of movies. At least in my opinion, I thought it was very, very good at building that tension, and there was even a couple fake out moments too, which I really enjoyed, to kind of break the tension and make you think, okay, maybe it's not going to happen like that right now. And then it does happen. That's something they used in a scene that's actually my least favorite part of this movie, to be honest with you. But that's something we're going to touch on here in a minute, because that is going to be my biggest criticism of this movie, and one of the reasons why I said it's definitely not a perfect entry. Overall, the tension building is probably one of the best aspects in this movie. As far as the audience reaction to all of the horror elements in this movie, it was very mixed as usual. With just about any theater experience I've had with a horror movie, or really most movies in general, there's a very big mix of reaction with the audience members, as a lot of people are genuinely shocked by scenes while others are laughing, while you have some people who are just completely locked in and pretty much mute for the whole movie. For me, my mood during it, as an audience member, I was kind of a mixture between locked in and reactive, because there was definitely a lot of scenes that kind of made me go, whoa, what the fuck? And there were definitely a lot of scenes that kind of made me uncomfortable too, which is weird because I'm a fan of the franchise Terrifier, which if any of you have seen any of those movies, you know those are very gory, very blood-filled, just hack fest type movies with a lot of just egregious gore. But I think the difference between that movie and what this movie does with some of the scenes is the gore is just kind of seems to be there for the sake of trying to elicit a reaction, like putting uncomfortable scenes for the hell of it, versus in Terrifier it's almost funny because of the way that Art reacts to the torture that he's causing. But yeah, anyway. And as far as the gore, just to get into that a little deeper, there was a lot of creative kills. One of my favorite ones was towards the beginning of the movie during the water sequence. Again, not going to go into any specifics about that, but just know that you're definitely in for a treat as soon as it starts, with a pretty creative kill, not one that's never been done in ways before, but definitely just the whole sequence of the way it goes down. It's a pretty intense way to start the movie. And there are some other decently creative kills. A lot of it is what you would expect from kills, but there's definitely some creative ones in here to look out for. So I think you guys have a lot to look forward to when you go see this movie. And as far as the level of gore, there is a lot of it, like shit ton buckets of blood, gore in this movie. But I can't really sit here and say that it was too much or at an egregious level as a fan of the Terrifier series, because I would just be hypocritical. But like I said, I wasn't personally a fan of the way they utilized all of it, which I'm going to dive into talking about something here in a minute. The gore, a lot of it, if you're squeamish, I don't know why you're even thinking about watching an Evil Dead movie to begin with, because what would Evil Dead be without the gore? Well, simply not the same franchise. And as far as the characters, did I care about them? Did I give a shit about them? Honestly, yes. To be honest, I didn't really care for some of the characters, but as far as one of the main characters, Alice, I really did kind of invest in her story with some of the things we learn about her and the role that she plays. Again, can't get too much into that, so I'm wanting to stay spoiler free. Long story short, yes, there were some characters I did invest in and care about in the movie. As far as making dumb choices, there are honestly multiple really stupid choices in this movie. And just to name a few without spoiling it, there's a character that drives recklessly. Somebody reads the Book of the Dead at one point, which I've never understood how people can look at something like that and read it when there's literal warnings not to, but anyway. And then you also have the grandma of the story, which makes a really dumb mistake, but she's excused because, you know, this isn't really a spoiler because it's like, it's very early on and we're already like 15 minutes into the video, so I think I can say this. But yeah, the grandma is kind of excused because she's not completely all there when she makes the mistake, or really at all in the movie. She's just an elderly lady. Not really a spoiler there, but yeah. Sorry if that ruins anybody's experience. Probably the biggest thing you're going to get out of this as far as spoilers is, yes, the grandmother is not all there in the head, ladies and gentlemen. But as well, the mother was very easily brainwashed. Again, not going to go into that. Long story short, there was some pretty dumb decisions in this movie that I audibly was like, why? Why would they do that? Multiple times in this movie. And that's why I say some of the characters I really couldn't feel too bad for, because some of the choices made were absolutely just ill-advised and no reason that it should have been done. I understand grief and it can make people do crazy things and be out of their mind, but yeah, no. Some of the characters in this really needed to chill. As far as the characters go, they're all pretty memorable, honestly. Alice being, I would say, the breakout character, the breakout star of the movie. She really stole the third act especially. So I would say she's probably the most memorable. But then you have Will, Joseph, Polly, Susan, and Edgar. Susan and Edgar being the parents of Will. Will being Alice's husband, because Alice is the only one actually not part of the family. And then you have Joseph, which is Will's brother. So most of our main characters in this plot are part of the main family. Our main character is technically not, or she's kind of like an adopted member of the family. So from that aspect, it's also kind of cool. Again, I kind of wish I could dive into spoilers here, but I really don't want to ruin anything for people. So I'm just going to leave that there. But yeah, some pretty memorable characters. I think you'll walk out of this movie and kind of be still thinking about some of them. And as far as the audience laughing or gasping, as I said earlier, there was kind of a mixed bag, but there was some pretty funny transition scenes, like from the opener to where we're introduced to our main, crew there. It's honestly, there were some other pretty funny moments in this. Like the audience, including me, laughed at a lot of the grandmother's moments because again, she's kind of out of her mind, so she says a lot of off the wall shit and that stuff that doesn't make sense. Some really good comedic timing, even though this is a very intense movie, so I will give it that as a plus as well. I heard a lot of gasps from people, mainly in the scenes that I've yet to talk about, because I didn't want a negative bomb as soon as I got on here, but there's a specific scene in this movie that really didn't sit well with me, and I think could have really been left out, honestly. I don't get the point of it. Were people talking afterwards? Some people were definitely talking, chattering afterwards, discussing certain kills, and especially the ending. I heard a couple guys being like, oh my god, like talking about some of the kills in the movie, so that was pretty cool. That's how you can tell it was a good movie. Got some good audience reaction out of people. As far as the top 3 moments for me, I would say honestly the opening sequence, like the whole opening sequence and what ensues there is really good. Very perfect opener. The car scene, again, can't go too much into it, but there's a big kind of confrontation scene in the car, big fight scene, I guess if you want to call it that. And yeah, there's 3 characters involved in it. One of I haven't even said the name of because, to be honest with you, I forgot her name and I didn't write it down. So there you go on that one. That's my second one. And then as far as the third one, honestly, the third act fight, like the whole third act fight was one of the best moments of the movie. So I'd say it has a very strong opener, very strong ending, and pretty good throughout the whole middle. And now that we made it to near the end of the video, I want to get into something that I really didn't like very much. And that is a scene where essentially an animal is harmed in the, like, not obviously not a real animal, but there's depiction of an animal being harmed. And I'm not super sensitive to that. I'm not like a cornball being like, oh, you shouldn't harm animals in movies. But you'll just have to watch the movie, and if anybody has seen it, you can leave a comment about this specific statement I'm making. But I really found that specific scene where something is done to a dog really just kind of a little bit gross, because it's like, I just don't think it was necessary to put in the movie, and it's something that kind of drugged me out of it. And I think people in my audience at least agreed, because a lot of people were gasping and kind of like really shocked by that, which I get it. It was meant to be a shock moment, and it's another moment where the tension's built really well. I will give it that, but I just think it was unnecessary, and I kind of wish they would have left that out and went a different way with it. If anything, I wish they would have just kept the dog out of the movie completely, because there was really no point in it. It made for some cool visuals, I guess, but later on, but I just don't know. I don't know. I didn't like that. And there was another scene, or honestly a few other scenes, that I kind of found, again, just gross for the sake of it. I was like, this kind of just feels like he's looking for a reaction, but I didn't love the way it was presented. So honestly, there's that. I wanted to put that at the end of the video, but there's definitely one part that me and my fiance kind of both agreed, and I feel like a lot of other people in the theater agreed. Not really it. Not a fan of that sequence. So And also, some just two ending remarks I want to make here, like some side info. The outro credit song was super dope. Like the song that was playing as we were exiting the theater. Really liked that. So great choice, whoever chose the music for this movie. And also, a Deadite from Evil Dead Rise actually appears in this movie, which was a pretty cool Easter egg that they implemented pretty early on in the movie. I said I wasn't going to do any spoilers. That one's kind of a little bit of a micro spoiler. But if you guys made it all the way to this point in the video, then I think y'all can handle, like, one little piece of information. Overall, I think I did a pretty decent job of not spoiling anything too crazy in this video, but I did want to go over it a little bit and give my initial thoughts and what I felt about the movie, and kind of just tell you guys a little bit about it so you can be more informed going into your watch. I hope everybody enjoyed the movie if you do go out and see it, or if you've already seen it, and I hope you enjoyed this watch as well. I really appreciate anybody that's new to the channel. I know I've gotten quite a few new subscribers recently from one of my videos doing really well, and I'm eternally grateful to you guys that stick around and watch the video, show love. And yeah, with that being said, man, I'll catch y'all on whatever I do next. Like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that cool YouTube shit, man. And yeah, make sure to come back and hang out again soon.